Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24111.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome back to the final hour of Tipp Today, and it is time for our Friday panel, and glad to be joined by Councillor Liam Brown. Joe Leahy is with us, founder of Seesaw Security Consultant, and Colette Roach with us as well from the South Tipperary Fianna Fáil's Women's Network, and of course constituency organiser for Fianna Fáil in South Tipperary as well. You're all extremely welcome, and thank you for coming in to us today. Can I start with just the Cashel angle, because I was speaking to Martin Brown earlier on about the decision to hold the St. Patrick's Day parade on Saturday evening, late Saturday afternoon, the 14th. And Colette, a lot of controversy around this. I know the Chamber weren't happy at one stage. Martin was saying that maybe they're happier now with the decision. What's your understanding?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, that controversy has kind of come around for something that should be a very positive event for the town. I do think that Saturday night, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm also not sure, where this decision, how many people were involved. It seems to be 2 or 3 people made the decision.
Well, it was the St. Patrick's Day Parade Committee. So.
Yeah, but they made I'm not sure how many people are on that committee. There was invitations went out on Facebook that nobody seems to have seen. Now I know obviously this week's meeting was cancelled and
Wally's passing,
for Wally's passing, and I'd like to pay tribute to Wally, all the hard work that she did with the committee over the years and in different organisations in the town. So it's a shame that it has kind of caused controversy. I personally have a thing about the Saturday night. I'm not really sure it's going to work. I don't know why there's such an objection about going from the Rock. It worked very well in other years. All the organisations said it was a safe place to take off from.
I think one of the reasons being that it's not as disruptive to traffic if they do the route that they're proposing to do.
Yeah, but for the sake of a couple of hours of one day, I don't think there's ever been any huge objections before. It was well organised in time that the
but what about the argument, Colette, that last year was a Sunday? It was the day before. It was the 16th.
and that was something that was, they tried it out and said to see would it work on a Sunday, and I could see, because Patrick's Day was on a Monday. Now a lot of people did object to it being on a Sunday because they were saying it's nice you'd have got the 2 days because you'd have had the shops open again on Patrick's Day, but it was quite successful on a Sunday. I'm not sure it being on a Saturday evening, and also I'm not sure as well. I've spoken to a few people who are chairs of committees, and I myself, I'm going to include myself in that. I wasn't contacted about, and we were going to put a float in the Cashel Parish Rose Green.
And will you not do so now?
Well, it's not that we won't. It's just that would we have a Saturday evening is right in it's kind of in the middle of mass time, so I'm not sure if we'd be able, because I think our choir is singing that night as well.
Well, it's 4:30, so it's
yeah, but mass is 6 o'clock, so you'd obviously the priest might be available now to do something. Right. But I'm kind of meriting on the Saturday night thing.
Divisive then?
It's become divisive, and should it have had? I'd like to have seen more people involved in the decision making, and I kind of want to see the understanding of where they were going with the Saturday night, as opposed to it being on a Sunday or on the day itself.
Well, as I say, Martin spoke to us earlier on, and that's what he spoke about, was the availability, more people available, maybe on the Saturday evening, not as disruptive where traffic is.
You're taking people then out of the town. Cashel was always a big parade. It was always a hub of where people wanted to go. You had people, organisations in other towns and villages that came to Cashel. So why are we saying that we're going to facilitate people to go other places rather than come into the town on Patrick's Day?
Right, but their argument would be last St. Patrick's Day, it wasn't on St. Patrick's Day either.
And I say it was kind of a trial to see how it would go.
All right, Liam, can I get a viewpoint from you on that?
Yeah, you can, fine. First of all, I'm loath to criticise any volunteer or any committee, because I do know how hard it is to get volunteers to go on committees. Yeah. So the work that they have done is good, and the fact that they want to do it is good. I was on that committee myself last year, and before anyone criticised me for criticising people and not being on the committee, the reason I didn't go onto it this year was because, similar to what Colette was saying, I'm involved with a group in Cashel called the Kayla, and we had intended on putting a float into the parade, so I didn't think that I had the time to both look after putting a float in and be involved in the organising of the parade, because many of the Kayla volunteers did help out last year as marshals. There's been a lot of disquiet in town over this decision. When it was first announced a couple of weeks ago, that was on Saturday evening, to be honest, it's not disquiet, it's incredulity. I think it's an absolutely bonkers decision. I've said it publicly. I said it when it came out first. I don't think it's going to work. I think there's many reasons why it shouldn't be on Saturday evening, to be quite frank, Fran. I would have actually, had I been on the committee, argued for it to be on Sunday again. I thought it worked quite well Sunday last year, even though it wasn't on St. Patrick's Day. The reasoning being is, it helped us to get the kicking band over from Tipperary town, and again, if it wasn't on the same day as the other parades around this year, we might have been able to get some more bands and have a bigger parade in Cashel. I don't think that's going to work on Saturday evening.
But would there not be even more bands available on the Saturday evening?
I don't think so, because, look, first of all, you're talking about looking after clubs and you're expecting parents to go out on Saturday evenings. I mean, people work on Saturday evenings. People go to matches. As Colette said, you're now up against Mass at 6 o'clock on Saturday evening. I know from speaking to some of the clubs and people who would have been involved in looking after kids that they're not happy with being out Saturday evening. It's starting at 4:30. We're still dark pretty early at this time of year, so it'll be dark around 6 o'clock.
And since I spoke to Martin, did you tell me, has there been a statement from the Chamber?
Yeah, just as I was coming in here to say it, I mean, there's a statement from the Chamber, and this just shows the divisiveness of the issue, or the disquiet around it. Apparently, I didn't hear Martin's interview, so I'm not going to say what he said, but I can only say what the Chamber said. And the Chamber said that the committee felt that the Chamber were on board. The Chamber have made it very clear they're not on board. Just 1 second, Fan, I just get it here now. I have it in front of me. I mean, it's very clear. The Chamber is not supporting how the decision has been reached, and they're disappointed that the views of the clubs, schools and community groups have not been taken on board. Colette covered a lot of it there. First of all, I think, apart from the fact that St. Patrick's Day is a community event, and it should be child-based, really. It should be children-focused, that we should have a really nice evening for children. Bringing kids out on an even time on Saturday evening in the dark by the time they go home is not the right decision.
But it's not going to be dark, is it?
If it starts at 4:30, well, I'd like to think that people will be hanging around Cashel for 2 or 3 hours, because that's the idea of having them hanging around and spending money in shops and stuff. Most of the shops on Saturday evening will be closed.
Right, so that's the problem the Chamber
that's the problem the Chamber have. So... And again, like I said, low to criticise the committee, but I think a lot of people wanted to get involved in the decision or have their opinion heard when they heard the first time round a week and a half ago, and they did. I do know that more people were going to go to a meeting this week, but unfortunately I'd like to pass condolences to the family of Wally Ryan. They didn't get to go to the meeting, and now suddenly the decision has been made. So the people who wanted to have their opinion heard, who were told they would get a chance to have their opinion heard, it just seems they're not going to.
All right, you're not in the area, Joe, but when you hear this kind of division in a town over something like the parade, it's a pity, isn't it?
Oh, it is, Fran. I suppose a bit of knowledge I have. I was on the Patrick's Day Parade Committee here in Clonmel for a good few years, and what we used to always try and do, really and truly, was you'd have to stage the time of it, because you'd get a band, we'll say, from Cashel. They'd be in the front of the parade in Cashel, and then if that was 2 hours earlier, then they'd be able to come into the back of the parade in Clonmel. Yeah. Just that you'd have 2 bands rather than 1 band. And you might say, God, that's very simple stuff, but 2 bands in the parade made a huge difference altogether to the actual parade. But I think there's a great opportunity missed. I would agree with the lads. I think a Sunday evening, or Saturday evening. Saturday evening is a different thing altogether.
I think Carrick-on-Shore made a great stride there in the nighttime aspect to their parade, and very successful.
Well, you see, it depends. People don't like change, for starters, in anything that they do. They don't like change. People like to be involved. They like to have their tuppence worth put in, And I think, I don't necessarily agree with that you're, not causing as much disruption, So there's more disruption now, like with roadworks than anything else, and disruption is part of it, and part of life, and it's part of the occasion. And I would honestly hope like that, there's a bit of time yet. I would hope that will be sorted out without any faces being embarrassed either, that let's get together and get on with it.
I'm sure the discussion will go on. But speaking of St. Patrick's Day, there's been much debate in recent weeks about whether the Taoiseach should make the annual visit to the White House on St. Patrick's Day. And Fionn Sheehan spoke to us the other day about an opinion piece that he had, where he said absolutely that he needs to go for pragmatic reasons. Can I start with you where this is concerned? Should he go?
He absolutely should go. There is no reason, given, I know we fundamentally disagree. We all disagree with what's going on in America and the kind of antics that Trump is up to. But we have to think bigger than that. The Taoiseach is not going to America for Trump. He's going for us. He's going to promote the people of Ireland. He's going to promote our culture, our businesses. He's going to meet businesses out there. You can't just pick and choose just because we disagree with who's in the office. I think it's actually a great opportunity for him to, even if it's privately in their own private meetings, to speak to him about that the opposition that the people in Ireland have about what's going on in Minnesota and Los Angeles and Venezuela. So they're an opportunity. So I don't think you give up those kind of opportunities to go out there and have your voice heard. So I think those meetings are a positive thing.
Ruth Coppinger had a right go at him in the Dáil. I'm not sure if you saw that piece, but she stopped just short of saying he was a coward, that he backed away from voicing the opinion of what she said would be the Irish people's opinion about this.
Well, he'd be a coward not to go, to be honest with you. As I said...
47% of Irish people in that Business Post poll saying he shouldn't go. Did that surprise you?
It did, actually, yeah. Because anyone that I've spoken to, anyone in politics, all feel that it would be an opportunity missed to go.
Yeah. Joe, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'd wonder what those 47% work for a living. What do they do, or what they don't, or do they work at all? I think no matter who is at the Taoiseach, regardless, if you look at the history of the Taoiseach, you have to go. I don't think there's even up for discussion. I think if you look at the benefits that this country, this little island of ours, have gained from down through the years from attending with the Bowl of Shamrock and the whatever else, and you'd have the pint here now and again and all that kind of stuff. Look at the factories we've got in, look at the employment we've got in, look at the relationships we've got in. I don't like when these people come out and say we should be standing up for ourselves and fighting our corner. We're a dot. We're a little dot on the corner of the world, right? We're lucky to be where we are. We're lucky to have what we have. And I think the best way we can do this is keep going is through dialogue, communication. I think it's a privilege to be asked. And whatever Taoiseach is there now or in the future, they should... Delighted to be asked and delighted to go.
And one of the things that came up in the conversation was this isn't a sort of a diplomatic tap that you can turn on and off, like to say, we won't go this year now because we're annoyed about so-and-so, but we'll go next year. But you mightn't get to go next year.
Well, it's like the old invitation, Fran. If you get it, you either take it or you don't take it. And if you don't take it, you mightn't be invited again. Yeah. And it is an invitation, and I can't just decide to rock on and say, I'll tell you, Colette, you stay at home next year, I'm going to study you. It doesn't work like that. Like, it's a privilege to be there. I honestly mean that now. I think we're lucky that we are in the place we're in. What can we do about Minnesota, or what can we do about Greenland? We can voice our opinion. We can say this and we can say that. At the end of the day, what do? We go along, we show cause, we're good at communication. We do that. The Taoiseach goes out, hands over the Bowl of Shamrock, gets on with it and whatever else. I think it's a must that we should go.
Liam, should he go?
On balance, fine, I think he should, yeah. I think obviously there's a fight between the heart and the head when you make a decision like this, and the heart would say we shouldn't be giving credibility to Donald Trump and his administration, but the head would say that apart from Micheál Martin handing over a Bowl of Shamrock, you also have big delegations from the employers, the big commercial. It's after coming out of my head now, the name of the organisation that looks after bringing in multinational employment and foreign direct investment into the country.
The IDA.
The IDA, that's it. I was trying to get it. I was thinking IFA. I'm thinking about the IFA all week with other stuff, Fran, but the IDA. Yeah, look, there's more to it, and as you said, there's diplomacy doesn't start and finish with Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump will be gone in 3 years' time. We hope, I suppose, God knows what Donald Trump will do, but maybe staying on after that. But you then have to deal with the administration that comes in afterwards, and they may not forget what is a snub. And not too many countries, if any at all, get the sort of coverage that we get every single year. We know we're going to be there every single year.
Are you across? I mean, it's not just about passing over the bowl of shit. I mean, it's all the lunches and the dinners and the get-togethers. And
that's what I'm saying with the IDA. Not just the IDA, but the American Chambers of Commerce and the Irish Chambers of Commerce. Meeting each other at a very personal level. I mean, in reality, the handover of the Bowl of Shamrock is simply a press opportunity for both the Irish and the American leaders. It goes on for 10 minutes, they take pictures and off they go. That's not the real purpose of the meeting. If it was, we will send over a Bowl of Shamrock in a box. The real purpose of the meeting is what you just said. It's the other relationships that you're keeping in touch. It's the meeting the mayors of Chicago, meeting the mayors of New York. I mean, it's not just Micheál Martin goes over there. He brings over a huge delegation, and as soon as they hit America, they head off to the four corners of the states, meeting all different groups in different areas. So, look, people have their opinions on Donald Trump. Some like him, some don't like him. Some think he's the greatest, thinks the sliced pan. Some thinks he's the devil incarnate. I have a few opinions on him myself, some good and some bad. But the reality is Donald Trump isn't the United States. And Ireland has to deal with the United States, whether we like it or not, because we are the starting point for an awful lot of American industry into Europe. And we should be very, very glad of that, because it brings an awful lot of employment, and we can't be snubbing their leader, as much as people might not like the man.
All right, let me take a break. We'll be back with our panel in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, welcome back to our Friday panel, but we're going to interrupt our panel just for a moment, because earlier on this morning I was speaking to Martin Brown, who is part of the committee, the St. Patrick's Day Committee in Cashel. We were talking about the controversy around the holding the parade, and the decision seems to be made now that it's going to happen on Saturday the 14th, ahead of St. Patrick's Day at 4:30. But as I say, some controversy, particularly controversy coming from the Chamber. I'm glad to be joined now by Gavin O'Dowd, and Gavin is President of Cashel Chamber of Commerce. Good morning to you, Gavin.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm very well indeed. Good to talk to you today. What exactly is your stance on this at this point, Gavin?
Well, you see, when we took over the Chamber before Christmas, our main stance for everything was inclusion. We've asked for it over and over, and with that we've been getting a lot of backing from clubs and everyone else around the place, and even the community. We've asked the parade committee to do the exact same thing. Instead, they have now doubled down. They've completely ignored the business community. They've completely ignored the clubs, schools, and everyone else is asking for a very specific thing. People are not saying to me that they're against having it on a different day than Patrick's Day, but what they are against is having it on so late in the evening. Now, and even moving away from the Rock of Cashel, people are very, very concerned about kids and so on, because as they're saying to us, is that that's a nice, safe location. Now, the Chamber itself has nothing to do with the parade, but because their committee shut everybody off so much, people had nowhere else to turn, and they started contacting us. So that's why we spoke out. Now, since we spoke out, we have been contacted by the committee to remove all comments, to not have a view on it, and to take down any posts that we have got to do with it. And even as Martin Brown has said that himself quite clearly earlier on.
And did you do that, Gavin? Did you take down some of the commentary?
Absolutely not.
Right.
Now, considering who's asking me to do this, I do find it quite interesting. Like, this is an ex-TD that we're talking about, and an active councillor. They're telling us what we can and can't communicate. We cannot stand for that in any way, shape or form. Like, the Chamber has an opinion and is allowed an opinion. And to say to us that we can't have one, when all we're doing is speaking up for people. Right, and
is that not an attempt to, Gavin, in some way, just to heal division within the town?
Well, not really, because what happened is three members of their committee came in here to me, into my own business, to speak to me on different occasions. And each occasion I asked them, I made the argument against them of what people are feeling. Like, people did ask that they have a meeting in a central location in something like Hollandafela. I was told no. I asked them, could they do it during the day? Again, this was a feeling that people were asking for. They said no. We have asked them, we'd say what people's feelings are on this. We have statements from schools and everything else. We have passed them on. And we even told them we're willing to pass them on. There's no issue. They can read them. We have spoke to teachers. We have spoke to principals. We have spoke to clubs. We have spoke to people over clubs. And everyone's opinion is exactly the same. So when someone is saying to us and keeps saying to us that our opinion is completely different, I'm not sure where they're getting it from. All we're asking for is inclusion. That's it. We're just asking that if there's decisions being made for the town, that the community itself is involved in those decisions.
And can I put some of the issues that Martin put to me this morning, which is that, it's going to be easier to get more bands, so it'll be more inclusive from that point of view. It'll be less disruptive where traffic is concerned as well with that new route. What about those?
Well, that's fair enough. If that's his argument to it, that would be nice to hear into the community itself. Instead of, he never discussed that with anyone. He went straight onto the radio and said that. Now, I don't believe that. I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I have had these discussions already with councillors and so on, what day should be held on. Even with Liam on it there, I'll have a discussion all day with Liam about it. But the difference is, when Liam is suggesting that he was having it the day before or a different day from Patrick's Day, he's actually having an open discussion with us on it and why he believes that. We're not shutting down things like that at all. All we're asking for is a discussion be had with it.
Right, but the only thing I'd say to you, to be devil's advocate on it, I mean, if there is a committee to organise the St. Patrick's Day parade, Gavin, I mean, that's their job to do, and that's what they've done. Now, you mightn't like the decision, but it's their decision,
No, I completely agree with you, and I wholeheartedly stand over to get what you're saying to us. But the thing is this, is that you're asking the community involvement, and it's the community who's actually in the parade. So when you shut them out of it, and you tell them that this is what they're doing, that becomes an issue. Like when people come up to you and they say to you, well, we don't agree with these times because of kids and everything else. And it's been brought up to us that the main kids that are going to be in the parade are under the age of 10. And people are saying to us straight out that anything after 5 o'clock is unfair to them. A lot of people have said to us that they like to bring the kids after the parade down to get ice cream and so on. That's now off the table, and that option shut down to them. Like, we have a coffee culture, and we have a serious coffee culture in Cashel. Now, all of a shot, what they've done is they've made sure that all coffee shops are closed. Like, it is our job to speak up for businesses. And when they turn around at the end of the day and say to us that we're going to hold this when all businesses are closed, that becomes a real problem.
So, will you refuse to support the 2026 St. Patrick's Day parade then?
I have made our position very, very clear on this with anyone. The reality is this: if all clubs and schools and everything else are in behind it, and if this is what they want, by all means the Cashel Chamber will get in behind them, and we will do our best to sell this to businesses. But the fact is that we keep hearing from absolutely everyone that they're not behind it. It's very, very hard for us to get behind it.
And Gavin, could you or somebody to represent Chamber not have joined the St. Patrick's Day Committee?
We were asked to go down to a meeting, we'd say, last week, but as I did state to them that we did state our feelings on it quite clearly to all members. So when that was ignored, we were kind of saying fair enough. We didn't realise there was a position open really for the committee. Well, realistically, we didn't really want to get involved with the committee. At the minute, we're looking to set up events for the summer and things like that. So we're going out of our way to include the community into it. We just presumed this is how this was going to work. We weren't expecting this to come back in a completely different direction.
Right, we gave Martin a chance to come back on with us, but he's chose not to do so at this particular point. It's a pity it's divisive in the town, Gavin. That is a pity, isn't it?
It is a shame, because we never set that out. And again, I cannot stress this enough. All we're looking for is people to be included. That's it. Like, this shouldn't be comfortable. This shouldn't be a strange thing to people. Like, people really shouldn't be making decisions for other people. Let people join into the conversation.
Well, you see, I mean, but if that was the way, Gavin, nothing would get done. I mean, you have to put a committee together, and they're the workers, and they, I mean, if
yes, I fully understand that. But when that committee is not working with who's even in the parade, like, you have to look at it. There's 22 groups that want to get involved in the parade. They have an email address for each and every one of them. I know this because I've been told this. All they had to do was send out a quick email to say, is there any chance that you mind if we do this? And this is the date and time that we're doing it on. Are you happy enough to go ahead with that? If people agreed with it, that's absolutely fine. But anything that they sent out, they did get back feedback from it. Right. And I do know the feedback they got back from it. Most people said that they prefer to have it during the day. That was completely ignored. And next minute, all of a sudden, we asked for an active meeting, and a few clubs have said that we want an active meeting. We have now heard on the radio today that no, these decisions are made, and that's that.
But if it seems to be the general decision to go along with this, you're saying the Chamber will buy into it, that you won't boycott it in some way?
Well, we're not looking to boycott anything. I will keep saying this. All we're looking for is that clubs and groups and businesses are included. That if there's a position out there and this position seems to be strong enough, that to be listened to. I don't know who has agreed to this, because we keep asking who actually has agreed to this, and we can't get a straight answer.
It must be the committee. It must be the St. Patrick's Day committee.
Well, I don't know, because when I asked two of them about it, they told me that this was all put out there. I asked, Councillor Declan Burgess about it, because he was away on holidays at the time. He came back and he said he has to go down and find out. These are the last things that we're hearing about. And next minute, we're told straight out that no, this decision is made. Like, people aren't happy about it. And they can think what they want, but they really aren't. And this is not trying to cause a divide in town. Nobody's trying to do that. The reality is all people want is to be included into this. And a decision like that to be made, like, that's a pretty serious decision to go from St. Patrick's Day parade to be on the 17th down to the 14th after, we say, 4:30 in the evening. That's a big, big change. And if you want to make a big change like that, you really should include the community, and that's involved in it.
All right, Gavin, I'll leave it there, but thanks for your time this morning. Thank you. Good morning to you. Bye-bye. That's Gavin O'Dowd there, as President of Cashel Chamber of Commerce. Just before we leave this, Colette, do you want a word on what you heard there? Would you go along with what was said? I
would. I mean, Gavin spoke very well and very eloquently and you know, put the points across that, you know, his concern about, you know, that businesses are not, and that clubs and organisations weren't really consulted about it. I do agree with you, Fran, that, you know, and as Liam said earlier, committees, it is very hard to get volunteers.
Absolutely.
And it's a difficult thing to be on any committee. I know that more than anyone. But you have to bring people along with you, and unfortunately, you know, this seems to have done the opposite. So I would urge the committee to maybe rethink it.
Liam, do you want a quick word on that before we go to
very similar to what Colette just said. I think there are still 6 weeks to go before St. Patrick's weekend. I think there's plenty of time if people genuinely want to have the best weekend that we can have.
Are you calling for a change of mind here?
I certainly am, yeah. I said from the start I didn't think it was a good idea to put on Saturday evening. I understand that people will have different opinions to me, and that's fine. I'm not telling people what to do, but if people ask my opinion about Saturday evening, I would have said no, I don't think it's a good idea. And like I said, as Gavin spoke about, he mentioned me there, me and Gavin have spoke about this in the past. Some people want it on the Tuesday on St. Patrick's Day. I absolutely think that's a perfectly valid opinion. I prefer to go on Sunday for some of the reasons that the committee want to go on Saturday, but I think this is the issue, that lots of different people have lots of different opinions, but not a lot of people are making decisions. So I think we should revisit it, Jack.
Right, we must leave that there. We'll be back with our panel proper in just a few moments' time.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007.
And you're very welcome back to our Friday panel that went off on a slight tangent this morning. Colette Roach is with me, Joe Leahy, and Councillor Liam Brown as well. A new paper from the Iona Institute on the wrong course, birth, marriage and family trends in Ireland, found that marriage rate fell from 5.2 per 1,000 adults in 2004 to 3.8 in 2024. In 2023, just for context, the EU average was 4.0. Now, Breed O'Brien from the Iona Institute spoke to me the other day about this. And Joe, can I start with you where this is concerned? Because some might say that the decrease in birth rates, it's not a great problem because the population is growing anyway due to immigration and I suppose people living longer and the like. Is this an issue as far as you're concerned?
No, I think it's just a fact of reality, I suppose. Maybe, Fran, like, you know, when you look at everything right across the board, you know, times have changed from the 14 or 21 children in the family, like down along, you know, back now. Yeah. So what's this? what's this ideal family and whatever else. Like everybody's looking at, look at the cost of living, look at the cost of buying a house, look at the cost of functionality in every aspect of it, like, right? And I think all these things, you know, they all play a part in it. And parents then have, you know, I'm not saying that parents before weren't educated, and I don't want that point to come out, but the reality is parents nowadays, and a lot of them are working and they have 2 jobs or whatever else, they want their own time out, they want to go on holidays, so hence they want a smaller family to be able to manage all that. It's a lot bit more planned.
Yes.
Maybe not, and that is the way life. That's a fact of life. That's the way life is, and as a result of that, then there's a knock-on effect.
Right, and this is reflected right across the world. This isn't just here in Ireland.
It's not just here in Ireland, and it reflects right across. And of course, then again, when you look at everything else, like, right, when you look at, we'll just say, you know, your local creamery, your local shop, all these things closing down. It's only natural that a lot of the country schools, then, if they're affected by numbers and all that, so that aspect has to change as well. I think, you know, I think we need to keep rural. And I think when you look at families and when you look at all that, this one-off housing and all that planning, all that played a part into it. You know, you have big housing estates. I see some new housing estates now. I was up there the other day up in Newcastle or somewhere up in Kildare, you know, and you know, God, you wouldn't fit a wheelie bin in beside the house. Do you know what I mean? Like the back gardens are in the size of, you know, nothing. And there's no central green area for kids to play or anything like that. It's the modern concept.
So we learned no lessons from the past where that is concerned.
Absolutely, we didn't. And this all comes back then to smaller families and smaller units, you know, and less marriages and all that, you know.
Part of the issue is, Liam, before us, that, you know, rural schools now are finding it difficult to continue on with, you know, some classes I read about only 1 or 2 kids in them, so we're going to lose those schools in rural areas as well. Is that part of the issue here?
Yeah, look, that's part of the issue, but that's not the problem.
No, I mean, but it reflects the problem.
I understand. That's what I'm saying. That's what happens because of the problem. Look, I think it goes back to probably a generation ago, where there was a couple of decisions made at government which have made a huge has had huge influence in that. Now, 1992, contraception became available in Ireland, so that was, you know, a big factor in declining birth rate. Charlie McCreevy in 2001 removed tax credits for children and made people single people for tax credits. So you lost the ability to claim extra tax for having children. So that had an effect on it. And also the one which I consistently bang on about, and I think it's the root of the problem, is, you know, the removal of social housing in a big way, which meant that housing has got much more expensive. You know, if you can't afford a house, you're not going to start a family. So we are delaying when we start families.
So is housing core?
I think housing is the core, absolutely, Fran. You know, I mean, look, I moved out of my house into a rental flat. First time, I think I was 20 years of age. The first time I was actually 19 when I first rented when I was in college. You know, you're now in your box room till you're 31, 32. The average age of starting a woman having a child in this country at the moment is 31, almost 32 years of age. So if you're delaying when you're beginning a family, you're going to have less children down along the line. What that causes is what you just said there. Yeah, we have a big problem, and it was the RT report I think you're referring to, where we start this discussion in Donegal, where schools are closing in Donegal. They're not just closing in Donegal, they're under a big pressure in Tipperary. And Tipperary, while I was coming in checking it out, has one of the highest age profiles in the country. Because we're mainly still a very rural county, and an awful lot of our children are going away to Dublin. I mean, I have 2 children in Dublin at the moment. A lot of our children are going into the cities, so they're leaving Tipperary, they're not coming back. They're leaving Ireland and they're not coming back, unfortunately. And these are people who would have had kids in the country.
But our population is growing.
Our population is growing because of immigration, but that's not necessarily a good thing, Fran. You know, I mean, first of all, we have to have a replacement rate for Irish people because, you know, I don't want to get mad into the whole we need to preserve our Irish culture, but we do to an extent. We also have a problem with, you know, when you have a large amount of immigrant community come into the country, they repatriate a lot of the money back out of it again, you know. They send money home, so, you know, they're working here, they're generating money here, but that money is going back out of the country.
Now, you know what people are going to say, sure, we did that for generations.
Yeah, but just because we did it, Fran, you know, and I mean, let's be honest about it, I don't put up with that sort of nonsense as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, we might have done it, but that doesn't stop me complaining about it being done to us. I'd be absolutely straight about it.
Yeah.
You know, we need to make sure that we have a viable population going forward that's going to be paying pensions for not just myself but for my kids and their kids, which we're not going to have if the replacement rate is below what it is at the moment.
I deliberately left you to last on this, Colette, but, you know, as a woman looking at these stats, what are you making of this?
Well, I would disagree with Liam slightly in that I don't believe that I don't believe the cause is housing. I think it's probably one of the features of it. But I think women have more choice now. Going back generations, and my parents and grandparents' generation, the only choice really was that you were a homemaker and you were. Put down your hand over there.
No, I want to come back in on that.
Yes.
That was the only choice that they had. Like, you got married and you had a family, you started a family, and the woman stayed at home.
The church was hugely influential.
And very
as well.
influential in that. There was a completely different society, and our society has moved on so much. Like Liam spoke, contraception. Like that was a complete taboo in Ireland in my parents' generation. So I think women have more choice now, and they're choosing a lot of the time not to have families or have smaller families, because they now see that they want to work. Now, sometimes I feel when I'm going down to Cork and Tuesday morning, I'd love to bash a feminist over the side of the head, that maybe I'd love to have stayed at home. But it's, that the people are kind of choosing now. Women are choosing that they want to work.
When you say that choosing, but are they really choosing of themselves? Or their decision making, is it not dictated because now you need two people to work full time to pay an average
society
mortgage?
Has completely changed. We've kind of gone.
So how much choice do you really have, if you know what I mean?
Well, you see, the government have funded an awful lot in parental leave, and I think that's where a lot of that funding came from, to give women that longer time at home. Like, we have, outside of Scandinavia, I think we have the longest maternity leave in Europe. I think outside of Scandinavia and Belgium and Luxembourg. So like, the government have brought in very good policies to help women stay at home longer after having kids, and to have better choices.
Our birth rate is dropping.
It is, and that's because of age and having maybe kids later in life, and and just maybe choosing to travel. Those things weren't on the table for generations years ago.
Right, yeah. Would you accept that, Joe? Do you accept that?
Some of it, I think, Fran, I think people, lifestyle, education has played a huge part in it, opportunities have played a huge part in it. The freedom of each individual themselves, their own life choice, what their career choice, all what they want to do and all that. And you'd see people there, like, if you heard younger couples like talking now, we have 2 or we have 3 kids or sometimes 4 kids, and that's enough now, we're finished now, that's it, because a lot of them were thinking, right, before, when Joe was born, Joe went away, he was a farm labourer, he was something like this. Now it's all college, and the parents nowadays are looking at the cost of all that, as Liam has referred to there, people in Dublin and Cork and Limerick and everywhere else, and the cost of all these things. So people are saying, well, to give every one of our children the fair chance and all this, then they're saying, well, hold on now, we need to cut our cloth according to our measure here. And all that, I think, is taken into the conversation.
So the kind of choice that Colette is talking about, I wonder how much of it is choice then? And I mean...
No, it's enforced.
It's enforced, isn't it? Because of circumstances.
It is, absolutely.
Like, you wanted to get in there when Colette was talking, I think.
I did, yeah, because, the main choice, as Colette was saying, women have more choice. The main choice that women don't have is to be mothers, Fran, in a lot of cases they don't have a choice.
They can't afford to.
And that's the reality. They can't afford it because, public policy has dictated that they can't. Childcare costs are ridiculous. We know that. Childcare costs in many places are the cost of a mortgage. And every year we get...
Well, it's going to be down to 200 by the end of 2030.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have 2 children, many people can afford an extra €400 per week, for childcare. Yeah. That's nonsense, really. I think in many of these surveys, when you ask women if they had the choice to be mothers for longer, they would be. I mean, it's all well and good having an extra...
I think that's true.
It's all well and good having an extra, 26 weeks or 52 weeks maternity leave. The child is still only one.
Yeah,
the child still has to be looked after for a lot longer than that.
I agree that it would be nice to have the longer, to have the choice to stay at home if you want to.
Yeah.
Financially, some people probably can't do that. Speaking to a lot of my friends will say that would have had children in the last few years, they probably would have said sometimes it made more financial sense for them to give up work for a few years, because between paying a mortgage and paying childcare, there wasn't really a huge benefit, so they chose to stay at home. But it does affect your career then, that being out of the workforce for a couple of years. It does. Like, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and nowadays, thankfully mine are growing up, but to have 2 in college, Liam,
well, that's what I'm saying. I've had 2 in college, and
at the same
if you
time,
work at all, look, fine. Here's the reality. The people who have the most children nowadays tend to be people who aren't working at all, and that's because they can avail of social housing. Once you go past a certain, and I've said this 101 times, once you go past a very, very low threshold of income, you're now into a stage where you have to provide all the housing costs yourself. And once you
So
do
you're
that,
back to housing again.
Yeah, once you do that, you can't afford to have kids. And that is the reality. The other reality is there's almost an anomaly in most Western countries that the more well off you become, the less children you have, which seems funny. Like, the poor countries are ones that have more children because we have more expectations about sending them to college. We want to leave our kids in a better place than we started with ourselves, but it's almost impossible to do that. And I know that in our own family, we may have wanted to have a third child, but we just kind of sat down and said, the numbers don't dictate it, and it's an awful decision to have to make to decide, can you financially afford another child? And not the fact that you want to have another child and bring up another child. But there's an awful lot of parents nowadays are sitting down, and that's the decision they're making. If you're heading into a 35-year mortgage, which is going to take up 50% of your income, you cannot afford to take a year out or 2 years out to look after a child, because then you won't have a roof over your head.
All right, let me take a break. Back with our panel in a moment. Pat, just the final item on the programme today, but it does play into what we were discussing before the break. On yesterday's show, we played a fascinating clip from the archives where two reporters travelled to Clonmel in 1985 to ask a group of older women about society and its changes. The use of language in the clip was very interesting, but I mean, what really came across was that these women, they got married, and even when they were married, they had no sense of sex education. They didn't know what to expect. They had no idea what was going on, really. Joe, would it surprise you to know that was the case?
No, not at all, Fran. I suppose, like back in the day, like the Catholic Church had such a power of control in this country. Like, it was absolutely, like, looking back now, it was embarrassing. It was also frightening. Like, women had to go into one part of the church. Like, I remember, they had to wear the headdress going into the church, and it was all about control. And the same thing. And with that, then, like, everybody did what they were told. You couldn't question anything. You were a complete rebel if you questioned anything, if you asked anything. And when it came to any kind of sex education, the opportunity of going to college, it was only the select few that had this opportunity, and everything was all controlled back in those days. And none of that, like, as could they go for politics? Not at all. Could they be chair of a committee or anything like that?
There's no question.
Unheard of.
One of the things we heard from one of the ladies was that there was no question of them being brought out by the husband for a night out. That didn't. He went for his pints, but they weren't brought out. And as things improved a little, they might have been brought out on a Saturday night, maybe for a couple of hours.
Yeah, allowed into the snug in the pub, I suppose.
But I mean, this is only 25 years ago we're talking about now in terms of this conversation happening, Colette.
It was actually a brilliant piece. Those women were fascinating because it just gave us a snapshot in time of an Ireland we wouldn't recognise anymore. I mean, the Ireland that they were talking about is it's gone. Like, there's so much knowledge out there now with, contraceptive, abortion, divorce. I mean, those things were an absolute no-go subject before. And Joe talked about control, and that's exactly what it was. It was how to control women, how to be... The church wasn't about religion, it was almost about fear, and women were controlled into this thing. And there was a very fascinating, she said, about the fallen woman. That was
they referred to a single woman who had gotten pregnant as the women who fell.
The women who fell, because that they were women that you didn't talk about, that they just disappeared. And that's what happened to a lot of those women, that they disappeared into laundries and into institutions and were never seen by their family again. It's actually a frightening time when you think of it.
Just, yeah.
And I'm so glad that we've moved away from... And
the other thing is that in the last couple of weeks, Liam, funnily enough, we were speaking about, the dance halls and the show bands of yesteryear, and people were indulging in nostalgia and how wonderful stuff was. And it was great. And still we had this going on too.
Yeah, we had. Now, look, first of all, when you look at that piece, you're talking about the piece was in the 80s, but really they were reflecting They were older women in the 80s being asked. So, I mean, they were reflecting on their youth, which would have been another 30 years before that. Yeah, look, nostalgia is a great thing. We always think this, the summers were warmer and the winters were more snowy, and they weren't. I mean, the good old days weren't really that good, to be quite honest. If you go back into even my own time in school, you were made very clear who were the people who were more elite than you were, and who sat at the right.
Oh, don't get me started.
Fran,
on that.
I mean, you grew up in a Cashel a couple of years before me, and you knew what side of the church you were allowed to sit on, or how far up along you were allowed to sit in the seats.
And if you came from the council houses,
that was it, and Fran, it's an awful thing that there's a little bit of snobbery around it, and that's what's stopping a lot of social housing being built nowadays, because it's almost snobbishly. We've managed to turn it snobbishly, which you shouldn't be. I'm very proud of the fact that I came from a council house in Oliver Runga Park, and I'll be quite happy to go back to, please God, someday. We have a different society, we have a more open society, but also I think what we've lost is community. And there's a difference in a society and a community, and I think we've become very, very individualistic nowadays in only looking after ourselves or looking out for number one. And I would guarantee you, if you went and spoke to those women 30 years ago, a lot of them would have come from corporation sites like the likes of Bankeny Drive and these places in Clonmel, and they would tell you that they're the best place ever to grow up in and live in. So I mean, we need to get back, I think, a bit more community, but we also need to make sure that we never allow the control of people that happened in the past to happen again, because there are people, and you mentioned, just to pass it on, before the piece we spoke before about the Iona Institute. The Iona Institute is an institute which we're quite happy to bring us back to that time in Ireland.
Well, it would promote marriage, and it would promote religion.
It would promote a lot of the values, and it would promote a lot of things that we would be pushing back against, and we pushed back against for 30 years. So I wouldn't like that aspect of it back, but I certainly do think we need to get back to a more community-focused, community-based society where we look out for each other.
Yeah, but some of those communities, there was an element of looking out for each other, Joe, but there was also being ostracised from those communities, or,
Oh yeah, both thrived successfully, right? I would have seen, like, going to school, you could see from day one, and back to what Liam said, you could see the social divide, and that continued on, and whoever got the Leaving Cert, the social divide still there, and the people that got the opportunities, you could see who was brought to the front of the class and who was the intelligent people like me were fired back in the back of the class, and that's the way life was. And you were reminded regularly where your position in life was, and that was what it's about. And if you go back, to people writing books, and go back to the great Alice Taylor, who wrote "It Takes a Village to Rear a Child."
Sure, yeah.
Isn't it so true? Let the village be a row of houses, let the village be a community, let the village be, because that's where you learned, and that's where you got your education, and that's where you also got your security there, you got your safety there, and all that applied, but the class distinction was horrendous,
And do we talk about that enough? Because whenever I get a chance to get my high horse about this, I do. It didn't even matter at one stage how bright and intelligent you were. It really mattered where you came from.
Where you came from, yeah. I mean, I was the same. I grew up in Spalfield in Cashel, and very proud of it. And we had a fantastic community there, and I loved the road we were living on. And actually, those women reminded me of my next door neighbour, Miss O'Connell. She was great for the stories and telling us what it was like years ago, and she used to tell me about when she got married, and I won't tell the stories now, but so it reminded me a lot of the things that she used to talk about. I remember my husband's grandmother, she had a phrase for it was over the blanket, children that were born out of wedlock, over the blanket.
Over the blanket.
Yeah, that was a phrase that they would have used in kind of North Tipperary. They were over the blanket children.
Oh my God, almighty.
But it's just a different society.
And just before I go, what you referred to there, that kind of that snobbishness and that class distinction, is that largely gone?
I'd like to think that we think it is, but I would guarantee you that if you scratch the surface with a few people, if they get half a chance, they'll let you know that they're tuppence halfpenny ahead of tuppence,
old money.
People tell you it's actually a funny thing in society that people are happy to have little as long as they have a little bit more than somebody else. Which is it's a very sad reflection on people. I never care about what somebody else has as long as it doesn't affect me. I'm quite happy for people to get on in life, do their best. But you're dead right. It didn't matter how intelligent you were. It didn't matter,
Matter at all.
whatever.
No.
If you were from the wrong side of the town, you were let know you were from the wrong side of town on a regular basis.
Right. I must leave it there, sadly, because I'd love to tease that out even more. But we must do it some other time. Thanks to Liam Brown, to Joe Leahy, and to Colette Roach. That's it from me for today. Thanks to Leanne, who produced. Ellie looks after content. Stephen's on the way with the Time Tunnel. It is just after 12, and Pat Murphy is at the news desk. Morning to you, Pat.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.